To describe it in a short way, Russia is basically ISIS only with snow. It's they're a terrorist organization, and people should understand this. And if the Security Council of the United Nations invites Russia to its meetings, and if they let Russia rule them, Russian representatives rule them for a month or something, I believe that it's time that we should demand them to invite like Taliban, ISIS, and other terrorists, because it's a total absurd. My name is Operator Starsky. I'm a press officer for the 4th Operative Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine, called Rubizh, or the Frontier.
At the beginning of the war, Ukraine managed to gain control of the skies. So could you talk to me about what's the significance of that in terms of military strategy and the progress for Ukraine?
First of all, I want to talk a bit about all those multiple international experts, military experts that were talking that Ukraine was gonna lose its air dominance, air defense, and basically fall in 3 days, which didn't happen. The importance of having strong air defense is crucial in this war specifically, because we know that Russians tend to target civilian structures, energy infrastructure, basically civilian infrastructure, the hospitals, power stations, and things like that. So we all saw what Russian aviation did to Syria, places like Aleppo, and of course we didn't want that to happen in Ukraine. That's why having a strong anti-air defense is very, very important in this specific war.
And could you tell me a bit more about the Ukraine's surface-to-air defense systems and why they've been so effective in controlling Russia's air power?
They were so effective because we want to leave, basically. So we integrated, and I think it happened for the first time maybe in the history, when we were able to integrate both modern anti-air defense systems provided to us by our partners, by our friends and allies, as well as those older Soviet-built air defense systems such as S-300 and others. And we also know that this multi-layered system is partially controlled by artificial intelligence, specifically here over Kiev. And also we have a lot of mobile anti-air groups. Here in my brigade, we have several such groups operating around Kiev and protecting the skies over our capital city. So since October, my guys managed to shoot down 3 cruise missiles and a bunch of drones, and they are there whenever we have this air alert.
The Ukrainian air defense systems have come under conversation recently because of the leak of those US Pentagon documents. And the documents suggest that Ukraine's air defense systems, they're potentially going to run out of ammunition in a matter of weeks. And they predict by the 23rd of May. So I'd like to know, to begin with, what are your thoughts on those documents and their credibility?
Well, as our authorities said, basically it's a mix of true and fake information. We know that a lot of those documents were photoshopped. It was proved and debunked like many times. But in general, of course, it's a very big danger, I think, for the global security to have such leaks, I think. On the other hand, I think that this gives us opportunity to improve our gaps, in our defense.
So in terms of what they were saying about ammunition, the Ukrainian air defenses, do you think that those statements are credible? That you think that the ammunition might run out?
As a National Guardsman, it's hard to talk on behalf of our anti-air guys, so I cannot provide you with enough information.
I guess if we talk theoretically then, if those statements were true, what significance would that actually play into the conflict going on if, for example, Ukraine does run out of ammunition and Russia, for example, gets control of the skies?
That's something that we were trying to uh, deliver to our allies all this time, that we constantly need ammunition, we constantly need new weapons, new vehicles, we constantly need new jet fighters and things like that. Why? It's because we're dealing with Russia, which is known for having a lot of artillery and tanks. We were promised several hundred tanks. At the same time, Russia still has approximately 6,000 tanks that they can bring from their storages and use in this war, and let alone thousands of armored personnel carriers and other vehicles. So that's something that we should consider. I don't want to talk much about the Budapest Memorandum, and all the promises of the security guarantees, because what we have here in Ukraine is nothing like security. But at the same time, I would like to remind people that we are struggling for our survival. And that's why when we're saying that, yes, we need those weapons and we need that ammunition, it's not because we want to, I don't know, like play it or sell it. We need them to survive.
With those leaked documents as well, do you think that that's going to have an impact on a potential spring offensive?
I believe that our command will do everything to adapt to those changes, because, it's good that we know what our enemy know. So I think that's probably that will actually benefit us. I hope so.
Also, what was revealed in the documents is apparently that I think it was in total 97 NATO troops are apparently have been or are in Ukraine, and that included 50 UK personnel who were potentially operating in Ukraine. Could you talk to me about the potential implications of that? Are you concerned about those details, true or not, being leaked?
I can talk a lot about NATO troops in Ukraine, because since 2016 we were cooperating with NATO representatives. We were training together. The, uh, the biggest answer that I can give is that we have a multinational UN training center located in Ukraine. Of course, we had NATO troops, not only NATO troops. And we are not talking about NATO troops participating in this war, because that would be something that, my dreams would come true. But it's nothing like that, unfortunately. I think if NATO troops were stationed in Ukrainian cities, they would never be hit by Russian cruise missiles in the first place. Russians are trying to push this narrative that in Ukraine they're fighting against NATO. And every time Russian soldiers die in big numbers, every time their ammunition storages are being blown up, they always say that those were not Ukrainians. NATO did this. At the same time, they never fought against an actual NATO country, I believe, in their history, because they're afraid of that. So they're trying to find some smaller clues or evidence of NATO presence in Ukraine, and pump it up and present as something big, which is like it's not serious.
Because there have been signs that these documents have been tampered with and doctored. What do you think was the incentive behind that? Do you think that that's something that's potentially fueling that narrative, like you're talking about with Russia?
Of course, because a lot of things in those documents were basically photoshopped. That's why they could present, presence of NATO representatives in Ukraine at this point as fighting party. So again, because those were presented and spread and shared by Russian media a lot, I don't think that we should take it serious. But at the same time, because we know that partially there are uh, some details that basically confirm that some information can be true. I think that we should consider that.
And do you have any indications as to who would have leaked those documents?
Because the number of Russian losses in this document was photoshopped, I believe that we already know the answer.
And what would you say that is?
Probably it's a country where they have a lot of snow and bears.
I'm having a guess that you're suggesting that it's linked to Russian or pro-Russian.
Not Canada, I believe.
I guess in general, talking about Discord and those sort of chats, website things, there's been a lot of disinformation and misinformation spread on there about the war in Ukraine. Do you think that more should be done to regulate those platforms?
It's a good question because, again, we are talking about the freedom of speech and things like that, freedom of press. So I think that we reached some type of new phase, maybe, in our history when we should understand how to react to situations when freedom of speech is used to promote terrorism, when basically those democratic values are used are being exploited by terrorists, which Russia does all the time. So it's very hard to answer this question because I'm not a specialist, but we live in the era of hybrid warfare that involves media and social media, and we should all find some kind of solution to this, because when freedom of speech is used as as a publicity for big terrorist organizations and regimes, that is a big danger, and that's something that Hitler did, by the way, in the World War II. So we still have to find this solution, and we have to find some kind of efficient way to fight against informational warfare.
This disinformation and misinformation that's being spread online, do you think that's actually having an impact on the people fighting for Ukraine?
I don't really think so. And specifically that video of decapitating of Ukrainian prisoner, it was made obviously in order to spread this fear and implant this fear into our hearts and minds. But Ukrainians are fighting for survival. It's either we fight or we die. That's why such things don't work on Ukrainians. On the other hand, just yesterday, I've been to our training camp where our assault brigade is forming new battalions to deoccupy our lands very soon. And everybody is highly motivated. I cannot say that such propagandist tricks work on Ukrainian people, because our survival basically depends on our skills, our motivation, and our ability to fight.
And that video, what are your thoughts on that video?
To describe it in a short way, Russia is basically ISIS only with snow. It's their terrorist organization, and people should understand this. And if the Security Council of the United Nations invites Russia to its meetings, and if they let Russia rule them, Russian representatives rule them for a month or something, I believe that it's time that we should demand them to invite like Taliban, ISIS, and other terrorists, because it's a total absurd. I'm not very surprised with that video because, again, Ukrainians were living next to this terrorist neighbor for centuries. We know exactly what Russians are capable of, uh, let alone those artificial famines that they were uh, committing here, killing millions and millions of Ukrainians and doing horrific stuff since the beginning of the 20th century. But I'm glad that people from other countries finally could have opportunity to face what Russians really are. And one important thing while watching this video, I didn't see any Putin in this video. There were just common Russian soldiers who came to Ukraine in order to kill. That's all.
That video is potentially evidence of a war crime, isn't it? So, do you think that um, that soldier that was killed is ever going to receive justice for what was done? Do you think that it's going to be possible to hold Russia accountable for their actions and for these potential war crimes?
Ukrainians will do everything to make it happen. And not only our officials, not only our law enforcement, I think common Ukrainians will do that because it's our national feature. We will find those people who did this crime, and they will pay one way or another.
The Kremlin hasn't, well, they've questioned the authenticity of the video and they haven't said that it is Russians who have done this. So, how does that make you feel knowing that?
They questioned a lot. They even questioned the authenticity of their own invasion in Ukraine because they like to say things like, "We didn't invade. Ukraine was trying to invade our small, beautiful, peaceful, democratic country." So it's not important what they're saying at all. Like there's no sense in even listening to their own opinion.